Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. In this video, I'm going to be going over my Impending Doom Occultist that I made in Crucible Solo Self-Found League. Now, there are a lot of Impending Doom build guides out there, and most of them focus on trying to make the skill poison, and I did not do that here. So this might be a guide on what not to do in the end, because I know these poison Impending Doom builds can take down Ubers, and this build absolutely cannot. So just throwing that out there right at the start. But I dropped a Shavs in Solo Self-Found. I had a pair of Vixen's Entrapment, and I decided, you know what? Let's try out making an Impending Doom build. So the way this works is Impending Doom triggers Doom Blast, which causes a lot of chaos damage when the supported curse is removed from the enemy. So I have that linked with a Despair here. So I'm casting Despair, and with Vixen's Entrapment, you trigger socketed curse spells when you cast a curse spell with 0.25 second cooldown. So the idea is you want to try and scale the cast time of your main curse skill so that it is close to that 0.25 as possible out of the Vixen's Entrapment. And then here I'm getting Enfeeble and Temp Chains to help with survivability. And then I tried to make this a pure hit build. Now I'll go through all of the gear and gem links and stuff, but first I'm just going to throw this into a map, show you how it's functioning. It still managed to do all right. It can kill some of your basic bosses. It can clear maps really well, as you would expect Impending Doom to do, as like when I'm casting the extra curses that are linked in my gloves, it removes my Despair, and then I continually reapply the Despair so that you continually pop the Doom Blast off on enemies. The area of effect is fantastic with this. The ability to clear with Impending Doom is very solid. It's just not going to have quite the bossing potential that you'll find out of other builds, but I did try and go as hard into this as I could with the Shavs and the low life. Tried to juice the hit damage to its limits, pretty much. And we got some Betrayal. I do have a Frost Shield here for some survivability, because I am Energy Shield based, low life. It was a lot of fun to play, and like just for basic mapping, like I feel like this was one of my better performing builds. It didn't really feel like there was anything it couldn't do, and it was my best boss killer even without poison for quite a while in the league. The one thing I kind of don't like about the build is kind of you're casting so many curses on top of each other, and there's this like blur on these enemies. I don't know if you can kind of see that, like of the curses continually going down. It kind of shifts the space a little bit and causes this blur. I don't really like that. But otherwise, it's pretty solid. Single target. We can sit here. I have like as close to cap block as I can get, but you can see my boss damage here is nothing to like boast about. So let's go through what I've got going on here. I have my Despair linked with Controlled Destruction, Spell Cascade, Void Manipulation, Impending Doom, and added Chaos damage. I had to juice the most out of it, so I'm getting more spell damage from the Controlled Destruction. I don't think poison builds would use Controlled Destruction, and then Spell Cascade is really what gives it the area of effect there. And I have Enfeeble and Temp Chains in the gloves also linked with Spell Cascade, so they also mimic the 3 casts of the Despair. And I can only apply 2 curses, so every time I cast Despair, it hits with Enfeeble, and Temp Chains removes the Despair, and then that's what causes the Doom Blast explosion. I also have my Frost Shield in my gloves. I'm using Apex Rage, which gives a bunch of flat chaos damage to spells. Poisons you inflict deal damage faster. But the big downside here is you lose mana when you use a skill. So this build required a lot of mana recovery to be able to sustain this, because every time I'm using a skill, it's costing an additional 40 mana on top. But Despair isn't a damage gem itself. It is only technically showing here as being linked with Impending Doom and Spell Cascade. The others, the added chaos damage, the void manipulation, the control destruction, those are affecting the Impending Doom, so the Despair Curse is really only costing me 20 mana to cast. Then you lose another 40 when you use the skill. So, the Crucible tree here, I got some Flat Fizz dispels, I have Wicked Ward, so I didn't have to take the Keystone on the passive tree, chance to double stun duration, and I'm getting Frenzy Charge on kill, but I have reduced Frenzy Charge duration, so my Crucible tree gave me Frenzy Charge and like a passive Keystone, which was pretty nice. It's next here. Dodre's Scored, this helmet gives added chaos damage for each curse on an enemy, but curse skills have increased duration. So unless you have a way to remove the Despair Curse, this helmet is bad. So with Vixen's Entrapment, this helmet works really nicely because the duration of the curse does not matter, because no matter what, I'm going to cycle through all 3 curses continuously and be removing them. So the duration of the curse doesn't matter. So this is a bunch of extra flat chaos damage for the hits. Now, being a Shav's build and being on low life, I'm also using a Lori's Lantern. Lori's Lantern causes damage of enemies hitting you to be unlucky while you're on low life, as well as giving you a bunch of chaos res and movement speed. This is kind of a staple for any Shav's build. So while I only have 55-85 energy shield here, it's almost like I have double that, because every time I get hit, that damage is going to be rolled twice, take the lower value, and that's what I actually get hit by. So it's pretty solid as well, given that without my Rumi's Flask, I have 44% chance for attack block, 67 spell block. With the Rumi's up, it is 56-72. I'm getting a lot of extra block out of this Rumi's concoction. Now, the other gear is to like stack more energy shield where possible. So on this amulet, the prefix is rolled perfect on this. T1 energy shield, T1% energy shield, and T1 spell damage. So I don't believe +1 all skill gems will affect the Impending Doom, because it's a support gem rather than a skill gem. So you can really only like boost the damage of the Impending Doom by getting +1 to all chaos gems, or like corrupting a chest for +2 of AoE gems, or plus the socketed gems, things like that. So it's hard to get increased levels on the Impending Doom. So this amulet wound up being the best for me here. I have a Ventur's Gamble that rolled very nicely that I got in SSF. I boost the resistances on this a bit further. There's no reason not to try and fit this in a build if you find something that spicy. Belt has a bunch of energy shield, a little bit of chaos res, some armor, mana, strength. You don't need life on this because I'm low life. Life doesn't matter. Boots have mana, energy shield, base, though it's not a high energy shield. And then the last resistances I needed, I'm dropping Sapped Ground while moving, which will, you can't really see it because of the Arctic armor, but Sapped Ground causes enemies to take less damage. That works nicely with the Temp Chains and the Enfeeble that's constantly going off on the enemies. And then my shield is a Shaper shield that I rolled to have recover 5% of energy shield when you block. And I'm also have a chance to shock attackers for 4 seconds on block, with a decent chunk of energy shield here as well. This Crucible tree actually lowered my energy shield, a 40% reduced energy shield in exchange for 8% chance for attack block, which was pretty nice with 10 flat energy shield. So the Crucible trees weren't giving me too terribly much on the shield, but the Frenzy Charge and Wicked Ward do help quite a bit. So I think that is all of the gear. What else am I running here? I have a Tempest Shield and Arctic Armor linked with Arrogance. This is causing those skills to be reserved on my life instead of my mana. And then I also have Haste, I have Grace, I have Discipline, all linked with a level 3 Enlighten, and then I have a level 20 Vol Clarity. So if I get in a situation where I absolutely need to be spamming down the skill and run out of mana, I run out of my mana flask even as well, I do have the Vault Clarity to make my skills cost no mana. I have a Cast on Death Portal, just in case. Steel Skin linked with Arcane Surge and Flame Dash so that I can get the Arcane Surge, giving me increased cast speed, mana regen there from 2 different sources, whether it's through my Flame Dash or through running around with the Steel Skin. And I also have a Frost Blink here just in case I needed it, though Flame Dash can go up and down ledges. Anything else here? Flasks, I have cast speed on the Quicksilver, reduced effective curses on me on a Jade Flask, Quartz Flask with extra movement speed so I can run through enemies, remove Corrupting Blood on a Mana Flask. My Jewel here is giving flat chaos to spells, a bunch of energy shield regen, chance to avoid being poisoned. Pretty solid Jewel there. Jumping into the passive tree, looking at my ascendancy here, I'm not doing any crazy stuff with the curse things here. I am actually speccing into Vile Bastion, giving me 2% energy shield regen for each enemy killed, up to 10% ES regen. I cannot be stunned while I have energy shield, and it's giving me 40 flat energy shield regen per second. This is because I'm really energy shield focused, being a Chevron's Wrappings build. I have Vile Bastion there. I'm also getting power charges when I spend enough mana, giving me increased damage and area of effect. So you can see I'm just generating power charges up at the top because I'm spending so much mana, and that's giving me increased area effect, extra clearing for this. And then the damage nodes, Void Beacon causes nearby enemies to have 100% reduced life regeneration rate, minus 20 chaos res. That's really helpful. Withering Presence gives me a bunch of chaos resistance, which is important because with the Shavs, what the Shavs does is it causes chaos damage to not bypass energy shield. So any chaos damage is going to take from my energy shield. So you do need to still stack a lot of chaos resistance, or you're going to run into issues with taking lots of chaos damage on your ES there. 15% more chaos damage here. Every second, inflict withered on nearby enemies for 15 seconds. So after 15 seconds, in the presence of an enemy, they'll be at max wither stacks, and then nearby hindered enemies deal reduced damage over time. So that's what I've got on the Ascendancy. For the passive tree, I started out going through the energy shield here because I need to stack a bunch of energy shield, and I need to have the mana regen solid enough to handle the Apex Rage. So I get Arcane Focus, I get Arcane Will, bunch of regen for mana, and a bunch of energy shield there. But one of the big things here is Pain Attunement. This gives you 30% more spell damage when on low life. So using the Chevron's Wrappings, I go on low life, and then just because of this, I get 30% more spell damage, so it's causing my hits to do more damage there. Stepped in the Profane. This increases the effect of curses when you grab these, as well as reducing effective curses on you. Your enemies I'm cursing are hindered with 15% reduced movement speed. Hindering enemies with my curses also allows me to get this nearby hindered enemies deal 15% reduced damage over time in the Ascendancy. Further up here, the only other things I went and got Influence for increased effective auras. I needed to stack a lot of mana reservation to fit all of these auras and things in. And I did grab Serpentine Spellslinger. This is the only chance to poison that I really got. I didn't go full in on this, and I was using this more as a defensive layer and for poisoned enemies have -5 chaos res. So I wasn't building around the poison, so I have 25% chance to poison on hit, but I'm not scaling the poison duration. I'm not doing all of those things. I'm just using it for the -5 chaos res and reducing the enemy's ability to deal critical strikes, help protect my fairly low energy shield build with only 5585. So pushing to the other side of the tree, I went across here life and mana because I actually needed mana. Practical Application gives all res, strength, and dexterity, which is pretty important. Arcanist Dominion here, spell damage, cast speed, and this jewel socket I'm using to convert all of the intelligence from these passives into dexterity. That allowed me to level my haste all the way up, my grace all the way up. Temp Chains wasn't quite as trying on the dexterity, Arctic Armor either. So it was really just so I could run haste and grace. And the haste I wanted because I want as much cast speed as possible so that I am triggering these spells like on cooldown. I wanted as much of that cast speed as I could get. Putting this careful planning in here gave me so much dexterity that it freed up multiple of these 30 dex nodes, which was very, very nice. Pushing down towards the Scion area, I grabbed Dreamer. This is reduced mana cost of skills, increased mana regeneration rate, and grab Foresight for extra energy shield. And here is an energy shield mastery, giving me another 2% ES regen per second. Shaper is life regen, mana regen, and then I get Skittering of Runes, increased area of effect of hex skills, and reduced mana cost of curse skills. There's additional mana cost reduction here as well. And this is where you get a lot of the big area of effect from, coming down there for Skittering Runes. Here I have another mastery, 20% chance to ignite, freeze, shock, and poison cursed enemies. So there's another 20%. So I actually have 45% chance to poison, but I'm not trying to scale the poison. It's making sure enemies cannot do crits, -5 chaos res. Moving on up here, I grabbed Insightfulness. This is a bunch of increased mana, reduced mana cost of skills while in full energy shield, 100% increased energy shield from equipped helmet. Dodre's Scorn doesn't have the greatest energy shield, but it does stack up, and it's actually a pretty bad roll on this with only 102 on the 100 to 120 roll there. Pushing to the left, Safeguard gives some elemental resistances, a bunch of spell block as well. Grab a little bit of strength, and then also grab Arcane Guarding. This gives a bunch of increased energy shield from the equipped shield. I have 233 here, so it's not the biggest ES shield possible, but I do get the energy shield recovery on blocks, so it is pretty handy. As well as 1% chance to block attack damage per 5% chance to block on equipped shield. And this extra 8 chance to block actually benefits me there with the Crucible tree. Pushing this from, it was 25% chance to block up to 33. So that got me an extra block chance out of this node, which was really nice. On the left side here, grab Sovereignty with increased life reservation efficiency of skills on this mastery, helping to fit everything in there. More mana reservation efficiency on these nodes there as well. And then I come down here to get Faith and Steel, more all res, more increased energy shield, as well as 10% physical damage from hits taken as chaos damage. This build isn't built to take big physical hits, but I do have 55 chaos resist. So if a percentage of the phys damage incoming is converted into chaos damage, then I will be able to mitigate that portion of the hit much better than I'm able to mitigate the physical hit. So this is really strong mastery to grab. The other way here is the big chaos cluster up here. Heart of Darkness gives you a bunch of increased chaos damage and a 7% chaos pin. There's nowhere else really to get chaos penetration, but it's kind of something you really need to make the punchiness of the hit-based build work. Withered, you inflict expires slower along the left side and increased effect of Withered. So Withered applies increased chaos damage taken, and I'm automatically applying Wither from being an Occultist with Withering Presence. So this just increases the effect of all of that. Unnatural Calm, this is for more energy shield, less physical damage taken while on full energy shield, which is nice. Moving to the right, I grabbed this increased mana regeneration per power charge. It's the only thing I grabbed up in this wheel. I don't need the crit chance and whatnot. I could get the damage by stacking power charges if I was to go all the way in here, but it's not worth the pathing nodes, I don't think, because the crit chance and multi doesn't do too much to help me. And then I push down through the power charge, get increased spell damage per power charge, grab this whole mana wheel. Prodigal Perfection gives increased spell damage per 100 max mana up to 40%. So if you can hit 2000 mana, then you will get that maximum 40% damage from Prodigal Perfection. Bunch of extra mana here, some more spell block, and mana reservation efficiency on this mastery is now tied to the mana mastery than instead of the reservation mastery. So that's what I've got on the passive tree. Nothing too crazy. It's kind of your basic Shav's build, but I made it work with the Impending Doom, and I love this poison mastery. Enemies cannot deal critical strikes, so this build is actually really tanky when you factor in the Lori's Lantern, and enemies can't do crits to me. I have got insane block. I have energy shield recovery on block, so it's really cool, fun build to play. I will do a boss, but I want to just run through another map. This build was a blast to just like smash maps with. because you can like almost hit things off screen, and like I'm almost never in worry of dying when map clearing with this because I have so much block. Like I can try and let myself get hit by some of this stuff here. Let me pop the roomies. You can see the energy shield just popping on the block a little bit. They're all attacking this voodoo pole. Lovely. And there's a bunch of enemies doing chaos damage to me here, but like watch my energy shield. Like it's just gonna like keep every time I block it keeps going up, and I have so much ES regen. It's very nice. Super tanky build, and it just blasts. It just doesn't quite have a single target, but with all of the defenses I have, the frost shield and everything, it can definitely get the boss kills. It's just, if you really want to do good boss damage, you have to invest in poison, which you'll see that recommended in a lot of other builds, but I can't, in good conscience, like, I can't explain and make a build guide for something I haven't actually done. I tried to build this as the hit build, so I can really only make the build guide given my experience and what I played here. Fight a Katava, bunch of rare enemies pop in here. I'm getting these frizzy charges. They only last for 5 seconds because of the Crucible tree. It was pretty cool. I did farm a bunch of Eater of Worlds with this build. Did Maven with this build, farm Shaper with this build. Like, it can do the basic stuff, but a lot of those, like, if you know the mechanics, you're pretty much fine. But like here you can, like, even on my character, just like the spam of curses over the area is like making my own character, like, getting this, like, whatever the effect is of the curse being applied, just kind of gives this whole blur everything. It's if there's anything I don't like about this, it's that. And to kind of maximize damage on a single target, you kind of want to try and position enemies where curses are overlapping. So if you're only hitting with the furthest out curse in the cast of the spell cascade, you're getting less damage than you would be able to get unless you're like trying to overlap and getting the rapid pops of the Doom Blast. Another great thing about this build is that because it casts so quickly, it has a lot of really good mobility. You're not going to get bunkered down in a cast time on things nearly as much as you would on other builds because the cast speed is so fast. And lastly here, let's fight a Baran. Has increased boss life, extra area of effect. You can gain power charges, Ellie weakness, vulnerability. I should be fine there. I'm not hurting on resistances at all. Let's see how this goes. I didn't give him extra speed because when this fight in particular gets kind of nasty, you do gotta move. And this is one of these fights where the extra movability is really nice. Temp chains to slow the enemy, and feeble to also like boost my defenses here. But like for a boss, like, I'm still doing okay damage here. It's not that bad, and this boss basically cannot kill me. Even I took that nonsense. I like multiple blasts happening underneath me. Spell block is good. ES on block is good. Really nice. It's a fun build. It definitely works. It definitely can do things. But if you want to take it to the next level, go into Poison for sure. Get a Herald of Agony out. And there are definitely other guides that go over this, like how to build a poison spec out of it. But that is all I've got for this one. I'd like to thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, definitely hit the like button, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Subscribe to make sure you don't miss more videos from me. If you'd like to help support my channel, please consider using the super thanks, the heart icon just below the video, or by joining to become a member. And I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.